These last 12 months have been the hardest and most difficult, as well as the most joyful and beautiful 12 months of my entire life. Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. I am so glad that you're here. Today we're going to be talking all about my leave of absence from Harvard, what I like to call my Eat, Pray, Love gap year. If you've seen the movie, you know. You just know.
I'm going to Italy, and then I'm going to David's Guru's ashram in India, and I'm going to end the year in Bali. That's what I'm going to do. Well, that's harder.
And I really see God's hand in everything that's happened in this year. It's crazy. So I want to just share with you guys how this gap year has been going, especially now that we're at the tail end of it. I have 1 week until I go back to school, which is crazy. And I'll also share some tips and learnings. So if you're thinking about taking a gap year, this is the right video for you. So let's talk about why I took this gap year. Basically, you guys know part of my story. I started at Harvard right after undergrad, did architecture, really didn't like it, and then switched into a different program, or dropped the program and just continued on to a different program in design studies at Harvard's Graduate School of Design. And that was single-handedly one of the best decisions I've ever made. Second, or no, probably the one above that is taking this gap year, which I took after 1 full year of the MDes program. And I really decided to do this because I needed to figure out what I wanted to do. MDes is an incredible program. It allows you to explore within the vast array of options within design. And even though I'm specifying publics, which is the study of human groups, there's still so much to offer. My goal of this year was to figure out what I want to do with my life. Like, plain and simple. I wanted to explore all of the options that I had, all the interests that I had, and come back to Harvard knowing that I was going to be doing a degree that I could use for my future. So that is my why, was because I need to figure out what I wanted to do. And my goal was to have that life plan by the time I got back this week, which is, this week. And the means of doing so was to take the year off and travel, explore, work in different areas, interview people. Those are all the ways that I kind of made this possible. And I'd say that it was very much successful. And I'll get into that in the video. And I also wanted to put a disclaimer out there that I know that this is a privilege. I know that not everyone can take a whole year off of school with the uncertainty and also the financial means to do so. I definitely have some learnings from that too, because I definitely went broke a little bit during this gap year. But it is like such an honor and blessing to have been able to take this gap year. And I also want to encourage you, if you are going through a struggle, whether it's like a mental health struggle or even a physical struggle, and you need the year off of school, you are more important than your education. Take care of yourself first and take that time off, whether it's a year or just a few months. Like, I want to make sure that I'm also being very cognizant of the fact that I did this more so for professional reasons, but people could use this as a mental health break as well. So I kind of had my gap year in 4 stages, and every 3 months I was in a completely different occupation and a completely different location, even outside of the country. I started my year in India, which you guys have seen all the vlogs about, but I worked in historic preservation in Hyderabad, India, and really experienced the culture and learnings. I'd say that this is definitely like the eat part of my Eat, Pray, Love year. I got sick quite a bit from that as well, so definitely a lot of learning in that regards. But I really, in this first 3 months, I wanted to figure out what I could do within design that would spark my interest. And historic preservation had always been something I was interested in, and adaptive reuse within design was a sustainable measure that I always have researched about. So this was a great start to my gap year professionally. And it probably was the hardest part of my gap year. So I got the hard part out of the way, leaving my home 20 plus hours. Oh my gosh, like what was it? Like so much travel, extremely far away from home, extremely far away from my culture, and really difficult to communicate with family back home. So definitely a lot of personal learnings as well. And I'd say my biggest takeaway was that I enjoy research, like being on the ground, walking through Hyderabad. I concluded with a research paper and presentation, which was extremely engaging. And I'm so appreciative to my advisor, my mentor, for all that she had done for me, and of course all the friends that I met along the way. So that was the beginning of my gap year, and it was really helpful in terms of professional development and gave me a lot of connections within a completely different cultural environment. The second part of my gap year, the next 3 months, were spent at home actually. So I was working with my dad, really learning his real estate business. I got my real estate license. And then I became a little entrepreneur. I built up my YouTube channel a bit more. I started working on my Etsy shop. I sketched Catholic images and Catholic saints. I did a few market sales for that, entered a few wholesale markets. It was really cool to kind of become an entrepreneur in this season of my life and figure out what would be next. And I truly appreciate the flexibility of being able to be at home and do all of these interests, because it wouldn't have been possible without that. So yeah, it was extremely helpful, and it was great because my Etsy business was starting to get me a little bit more income, which I then used to supplement what I did in Hyderabad, which was on stipend, by the way. All of my India experiences were all a stipend, so I didn't make any money during that experience, but most expenses were paid for. I'd say that my downtime at home was more so the pray part of my gap year, really reflecting on my experiences in India that were very difficult, honestly, and also very joyful, and coming to, who I was and who I wanted to become in the future. So really awesome. And it also made a lot of reflection for me. The next part of my gap year, the third part, was going to Nigeria, which was incredible. And actually, I was supposed to be there about 2 months earlier, but again, needed the time at home to relax and to figure out what I wanted to do next. So in Nigeria, though, I worked in Lagos, so one of the main cities. I had never lived out in Nigeria on my own. I'd always been with family, and we go straight to the village for a few months. So it was incredible just being at home, like what I consider my home country. However, in a completely, solo environment. Like I had a lot of agency in Nigeria, which was incredible. So I definitely had family in the area as well, which made it super helpful. But I was working in real estate, but also as a designer. So I was an architectural designer, as well as, learning the real estate market in Nigeria, interviewing a number of professionals, and just connecting generally with my own culture. And this was such a vibrant experience for me. I made such amazing friendships. I really dove into aspects of my culture that I didn't think I don't know, I just didn't know about, honestly. And I learned that I can still design an entire building, because that was my project. I designed entire building and helped, develop concepts for additional buildings. And that was really empowering to know that I could design, but it also made me realize that design wasn't the most exciting thing. I still was there and more so interested in the conversations I was having, and hearing about the market in Nigeria, or going on site visits and seeing the full product come together. So that was an incredibly enriching experience. And I couldn't be more thankful to every single person I encountered in Nigeria who welcomed me so well. So yeah, that was great. I'd say that was my love part of my gap year, if I was gonna label it. Though I'm sure I ate and I prayed and I loved throughout the entire year, but definitely found such a deep love for my culture coming back home after that trip. And right now we're in the fourth part, which is being at home again. I am again building my businesses, and I decided to work as a real estate agent in the suburbs of Philadelphia. And this has been one of the most enriching experiences, putting my research in Nigeria, my adaptive reuse research, my affordable housing research into practice, and learning the day-to-day experiences of people who are first-time home buyers looking for homes, looking for affordable options. It's been such an eye-opener for me. And I also decided to volunteer with Habitat for Humanity in with their projects team. So I've been helping them think about their renovation projects and how to integrate, additional hands to make those happen. So it's been really incredible, tying my interests together, and of course coming to this place of being okay, real estate is truly an interest of mine, as is adaptive reuse, designing for, a viable future. And I think that culminates in this last week, honestly, where I'm wrapping everything up. And I actually got invited to a conference to share one of my research papers on adaptive reuse in Nigeria. So it's really cool to see the fruit of this gap year, not just in, I guess, the professional developments, but also in my personal, how I've grown as a human being, and my character, in the way that I see the world. And I could not be more grateful for everything that happened this gap year, even the really difficult things, because God redeems those difficult things. Many a moments where I was down and sad and out and asking, why is this happening to me in this foreign place, or in this uncomfortable space, or in this uncertain space? And then whether it be the next week or at the end of this year, where I'm I needed that to be right here. So very grateful to God for all of those learnings and that experience, all of those experiences of sadness and just crying in my room alone, which happened often. I mean, so I'd say, if you're gonna ask me if I accomplished my goal of this gap year, I would say beyond yes. Like, one, I did explore all these career paths that I was interested in and additional ones just by, messaging people, cold messaging people on LinkedIn, which I always recommend you doing, and by reflecting on my year really well, which is going to be one of my tips for you guys. But just being consistent about, looking for that goal of like, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? Always asking myself, am I actually enjoying this or not? Like, was so helpful for me. And I am now excited to begin school in a week and be able to say that I want to do real estate development and specifically focusing on affordable housing. So that's my goal. I'm going straight into it. I have so much more background and perspective and experience to share. I want to do really great things, and really great things start in very small ways. And I've realized that in all of the experiences that I've had in this last year. So super grateful for it. Definitely learned a lot. Now let's get into the tips. Okay, so tip number one is make sure that you are financially stable enough to do this gap year. And I alluded to needing some help financially. Thankfully, I had, my home like in Philadelphia to fall back on, so I wasn't just always traveling and having to pay for places to stay. But I'd also say that I had 2 mini social media jobs that I could do from anywhere in the world. So I was able to continue those jobs even when I went to Nigeria or went abroad. Also, my Etsy shop gave me a tiny, tiny little bit of income, and I did a few like freelancing projects as well for people. So that just helped me keep afloat. I also applied to things where I knew I would either I would get a stipend carried along with it. So India, they paid for my travel, food, everything that would get me there and keep me there. Though of course I didn't have any additional income. So then I came home, made some money, worked a bit, and then Nigeria, where I paid for my own travel, but there was a stipend available. So those experiences where you're cutting into like the stipends and different options for you for payment is super important in this case. And I know that there are volunteer opportunities that you can do where you can also then apply for an outside grant or scholarship for your to cover your expenses. So that's also something to look out for. I also would say to sandwich in those breaks. So again, I had the whole year and I could have just been traveling the whole year, which initially I was going to do a lot more traveling. However, I am so grateful that I had planned to be home and just in a very familiar and comfortable environment again before traveling. It really helped me discern whether I wanted to keep doing this or, just find a full-time job, because that's the whole point. If you had planned the whole year out, or if I had planned the entire year out to a T, I don't think I would have had as enriching year as I had. Like for Nigeria, actually, I chose when I wanted to go. Originally, I was going to go like months earlier, but I decided to hold off on that. And I think I needed that extra time home. So those breaks were really necessary for self-reflection, which, speaking of self-reflection, I highly recommend using a spreadsheet or a journal or documenting how you're doing and reviewing it each week or every other week. Honestly, the more often the better, because then you are being very intentional about your goals, and you will say at the end of it, like I can say that I accomplished my goals because each week I was reviewing whether I did this or not. I started this because in Hyderabad, World Heritage USA actually asks us to send weekly pictures and like a type and update. So I have a spreadsheet where I have like, okay, how am I? What did I do this day? So I have like my virtual journal basically. And then I have like what I can improve on, and then I will check, and I have another section for like checking up on the last week. Did I improve on those things? And then also including spots where like, okay, let me talk to my supervisor. Let me make sure I check back in with myself. And that was super helpful for me again, because it allowed me to reconnect with what I needed and what I had to get done, both professionally and personally, which is super helpful when you're abroad and you're on your own and you're just not in a space that you're comfortable with. So I highly recommend that. I also recommend keeping like an index of who you're talking to. I also have a template for this, so I'll share both templates in my description box so you have this for your use in any case, even if you're just like your general professional Rolodex that you want to just keep track of people's contacts, where you met them, how you met them. It's extremely helpful for me. I used it even before I went abroad, and of course after that I've been home. I highly recommend, because then you know people's professional lives and you can always go back and it'll remind you to check up on, what they're doing and what they're up to, and how you can also support other people, which is super important. Speaking of staying connected, make sure you stay connected. I would say that this is probably the hardest part, is that, when you're on your gap year and you're just like kind of rolling, it's hard to be like, okay, let me like set aside time to just be like reflect on, but also be again with the people that I met just a few months ago. So that's been like the coolest part, is just checking up on everyone and seeing how they're doing and seeing life changes. So I don't want you to forget about the people that you met in the past and how they've like inspired you today. And that's something that highly encourage you to make sure you're staying connected with those people. Like keep WhatsApp, keep the app, keep whatever you guys are using to communicate, and like make it a practice monthly to check up on people. I kind of mentioned this, but be open to side quests. Be open to those sneaky random things that are like added to your week that you're like, why am I doing this? But like, why not? My uncle was bent on us going to Badagry, which is where one part of the slave trade in Nigeria and like near Lagos. And it was such an incredible trip that almost didn't happen because it was my last week and I was like, this is so much, this is so crazy, but it was so good to go. So yeah, be open to those random adventures and take them with, excitement and an open mind throughout your entire experience. And one more tip for our US-based listeners, because I sure was not prepared for this, but loan repayment begins 6 months after you are no longer a full-time student. I believe that's in every state. Well, check with your state laws, check with everything, student loan repayments. Might change by the time you're listening to this, maybe a few months or a few years from now. So just double check. But yes, make sure you're ready to pay your student loans or defer them. I ended up deferring them for the duration of my year off. But yeah, those are all the tips that I have for you guys. And I'm so grateful that I could reflect on this with you. My spiritual director told me that I should just personally think about the fruits of this year and, give myself a general reflection. And I feel like this video is part 1 to it, and I'll be going on a silent retreat next week to just have deeper reflection and just give gratitude and give praise to God for how wonderful this year was. So I'm grateful for you. Thank you for following along this entire journey with my different vlogs and videos and reflections and the downs and the ups. I could not have done this year actually without you guys. I met some of you guys actually through my travels, and I could not be more grateful. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful time on your own gap year or your own new journeys of any sorts. I just want to wish you the best and many blessings to come. And I'll talk to you in my next video. Make sure to subscribe and check out the description for more information. Bye.